episode 13 of Be Salty, How to Know the Will of God. This is a very lofty goal for 15 minutes, but I'm going to do my best. I need to lead with Heidi is not here today, and I'm very sad about it, but it's also good she's not here because I have to tell a story about her, and she would know. She would know. So this morning, woke up early, and Heidi's getting older, but she knows, like, first thing in the morning that it is time to eat. And I say she's getting older as a point because she used to be real crazy early in the morning, and now it's more like, oh, they're awake, so now I know that it's breakfast time. And Crawford's stepdad, otherwise more lovingly and appropriately known as Papa, is a veterinarian, and he very kindly was going to come pick Heidi up this morning to go get her teeth cleaned because homegirl has halitosis times a bazillion. So part of the protocol is that she couldn't eat anything after 6 p.m. last night, which she eats at 4 o'clock like a geriatric. So that didn't really affect her last night. But this morning at 6 a.m., she was like, where is my food? And I'm going to try to upload a video that I took because I'm not going to do it justice. But so if that works, that'll come now.
I know. Listen, I know you want breakfast. I know you want food. I cannot give it to you right now because Papa's coming to clean your teeth. He's got to pick you up. I know. I'm sorry. I know.
And if that didn't work, she basically said, she comes up to me, she does this 6 or 7 times, and she kind of looks at me, then she walks over to me, and then I talk to her about it, and I try to tell her, this is what's going to happen, you don't need to be scared, you don't need to be angry, this is why you're not eating. I truly talk to her like she's a human. I know that's not surprising at all. And then she kind of huffs and puffs. She sits there and she gives me a second. She's like, okay, you're clearly not getting up to do what I need you to do. So now I'm going to be mad. I'm going to go pout. And then she comes back to me and she's like, why am I not eating? Why is it not food time? She goes and looks at her bowl. She comes back and forth it's like a whole thing. So when I was thinking of what to talk about today, this morning, whatever, I had touched on in Morning Minute this week about how to know the will of God. And that's a huge thing to talk about. And I don't feel like I even really spoke very correctly, but I wanted to revisit it. And I was talking to Crawford yesterday morning, and I kind of said, hey, what do you think I should talk about on Friday? And he was talking about, I can't remember his lead in, but it was about knowing what to do, what's the right thing to do. And he made a really, really good point, and I want to save it for later, but it more validated that this is what I should talk about. So I always like to have a lead-in story of whatever I'm going to talk about. I've said talk about 100 times. Sorry, guys. And then I was sitting there and I was praying through okay, well, what's happened this week? I'm sure a million things about where I'm wanting my will and not God's. But the Heidi story was just kind of a perfect lead-in of she, the way things are supposed to go and what she wants is to have breakfast when she's supposed to have breakfast. And I sort of felt like in that scenario, and this is a very loose analogy, but it's almost like I was sort of like the God in this analogy, knowing what was actually going to happen and why I was withholding her food, and that this thing that she was going to go do is different and probably scary and might be painful, but it will be better and it will benefit her and it will benefit our house and anyone that comes in contact with her, for her to have her teeth cleaned because it's so offensive. So in that moment, it just reminded me of when I personally seek my will versus his will, and I huff and I puff and I pout and I go back to him and I'm going, why isn't this happening? Why isn't this happening? And then I huff and I puff and I pout and I cry and I'm pacing and I'm back and forth. And it was all the things that Heidi was doing in that moment of wanting the breakfast, which obviously this is very loose, but This is literally us when we resist his will. But here's the thing. His will is completely irresistible because he is sovereign. And it's going to happen, whether we like it or not. And the pain comes when we resist it, or when we let his will and ask for his will into certain parts of our life, but we refuse it in other parts. That's when we think that what we want should happen versus what he knows should happen. So life does not necessarily get easier when we desire and surrender to his will, but in a way it does, because had Heidi gone, okay, Mom, I get it now. You're going to clean my teeth, and that's why you're going to withhold this food. It'd probably be a little bit easier. She surrendered. It's obviously impossible because she's a dog. And second of all, we don't do that either. But a way we can do it is we can just be open-handed and say, God, okay, let me desire your will, because there's always purpose in what he's doing. And we don't see it. And there's a line that I've heard in a sermon is, when we can't see his hand, trust his heart. So Heidi can't see why I'm withholding the food, but she knows that I love her. And if she, had the emotional capability to trust me, which I think she does, and dogs do. Again, loose analogy, not a heretic, on purpose. But if she'd been able to, truly see the end result of what was happening, it'd be a lot easier. And that would be a lot easier for us. But then there wouldn't be the obedience piece of just trusting and obeying that whatever he's doing is the right thing to do, because it's his will, and his will is always right. So what is this? Like, what is the purpose? What is the end all purpose of why we should want his will and why we should desire his will? And that's because his purpose is for his name to be glorified in what we do. So this was a line that Crawford said to me. He said, it's not about what we do, it's how we do it. So there's not, like, everything is an opportunity to trust him and to glorify his name and to step into his will and want his will. Everything. The parenting blip, the hard work email, the meeting that you're going to, the traffic, there's always opportunity to step into his will by how we act, by how we receive what's happening, the circumstances that we're in, because we can't change them, but we can always glorify his name. So, okay, how do we do this? How do we know what his will is? How do we know, even in those mundane scenarios, of how to act when it's not about what we do, it's how we do it? How do we even know what his will is? Well, to know something, we've got to desire it. And it's not our nature to desire anything outside of what we want. It's not my nature. I want what I want. So how do we do that? How to desire it is, we've got to learn about his character, and we have to study him, and we have to know his word. And this doesn't mean like, well, if you're just starting out reading the Bible or have just learned who this Jesus person is, that doesn't mean that you're any worse or better off. You're actually probably better off than the seasoned believer, because there's just such an element of grace when we start walking with him. But it's opening your Bible and it's reading and it's seeing the passage for who God is. Who are you in the scripture? Not how can I get what I want out of who this says you are. Does that make sense? So when we learn about his character, he's good, he's righteous, he's sovereign, he's honest, he's faithful, he's loving, he's only good, he's only kind. He's only these things. He's also powerful and mighty and holy and hates sin. And just listing out the attributes of who he is and preaching those to ourselves during the day. When we get in our head and we get to the I wants, I needs, I this, look to the cross. Look who he is and preach to yourself throughout the day who he is. And that will set our minds to want his will. This is not easy. This is not something I do. This is something we all could and should do, but it's certainly not natural. So it's just like any muscle to be exercised and trained. And the next thing we can do is we can ask him, hey God, I don't want your will. Help me want it. He can handle that. He already actually knows that. So surrendering that and confessing that is just kind of leveling the playing field and bringing a repentant, humble heart that says, I actually don't want what you want. How do I want it? I don't know how to do that. And he can help you do it. So what are the attributes of his will? So like there's the attributes of God and his character, but what does his will look like? Well, I've said it before, but his will is irresistible. It's going to happen because he's sovereign. This is when we just accept that and know, but because of what we know about his character, we can trust his will, because it's those things too. It's only good, and it's for his glory and our good. And those two things are always worth it. A colloquial saying is what's worth it is not easy. I just like made that up. I don't know if that's like a saying, but you know that's like a thing. When it's worth it, it's not always easy. There's time, effort, I'm not going to do that. I was going to talk about the 3 little pigs. The one that builds his house real quick out of straw and it just falls over. And then the sticks falls over. But the brick, that took more time, took more effort, but it withstands. So what are some things what are ways that he refines his will in our hearts and our desire for his will in our hearts? So it's through things like that, like the 3 little pigs. It's a trial. It's something that takes more time. It takes more effort. It takes more focus. It takes just like a tear down. It takes a blow down of pieces of our life that we cling to so tightly that they just don't leave room for him. There are things that there are areas of our life, yes, where we're like, I want your will. Whatever you want done for my children, I want that. But like, I'm not going to give you this friend group that they're in because that's a popular group. And like, he has to be in this group in order for your will to still be okay. That's not it. It's full surrender. It's full open-handed. It's okay, God, your will, not mine. What does that look like? And we're not going to know. But it's minute by minute, and it's trusting, and it's abiding. And I know that I say those things flippantly, but I don't mean them flippantly. That's all that we can do. And it's minute by minute dependence, and we are to pray without ceasing. Verses about his plans and our good. Proverbs 19:21. That's a man can make many plans, but the Lord determines his purpose. The Lord's purpose will prevail. Let me make sure I'm just butchering that. There it is. You can make many plans, but the Lord's purpose will prevail. That's also in Proverbs 16:9. So he wants us to plan. He wants us to, we're supposed to do the next right thing. Take care of your responsibilities. Make a plan for your day, but hold loosely and just know that whatever doesn't happen the way it should, there's always opportunity to learn and always opportunity to trust. Psalm 16:11, you will make known to me the path of my life. In your presence is fullness of joy. He's going to make it known. It will not look exactly like we want it to. It will be better. I promise. That doesn't necessarily mean like Scrooge McDuck sitting on a mountain of gold, but it means your heart will look better and cleaner and more like Christ's, which makes that pot of gold, you won't want it as much. You might have that and this, which would be great, but the peace that comes from looking more like Christ is more valuable than anything that we can think of on this side of heaven. Okay, what else? Jeremiah 29:11. For know the plans I have for you, plans to give you a hope and a future, plans to prosper you. He has good plans for us. We can trust him. Why can we trust him? Because he's only good. This was in Keka's little, here it is. Gosh, can't believe I had this right here. That never happens. This is, okay, the passage from her Sunday school this week was Jeremiah 17:7. Blessed is he who trusts in the Lord. Blessed is the man who trusts in the Lord for his, and whose trust is the Lord. So trust in him, and your trust is him. So everything that you are depending on is him. And then the big picture question is, can God be trusted? And it says, yes, God cannot lie, so we can trust whatever he has said. I love the way that that's written. I had not thought of it that way. I've thought that he's honest and he's trustworthy, but I didn't look at the flip side of he can't lie. It's not in his nature. So when we are seeking his will, we can trust him because he's only good and he can't lie. And the things that he tells us in the Bible are true. And I say this all the time, but this is a blip. We are here for such a short time compared to eternity. And it's hard for our human brains to fully fathom that, but it's the truth. what we're doing now should be glorifying what's to come. And what's to come is his kingdom. So back to, well, let me see where I want to go here. Okay, ways to emulate his character. God gave us Jesus. God gave us fully God, fully man to show how to behave as humans to glorify him. We will not be Jesus, but we should want to look like him. And what is Jesus? He is humble. He is a servant. He is truth-filled. He is truth-telling. He is loving. He is welcoming. He does not show favoritism. He is everything and more than we could ever imagine God's will to be, which is good, which is perfect. So at the end of the day, I don't know exactly what verse this is. When it's hard to trust him, when it's hard to see his will, when it feels like you're being starved of your meal, but you're really just going to go get your teeth cleaned, we have to remember his ways are higher than our ways. We are not on an intellectual playing field with the God of the universe. So it requires humility, and it requires absolute dependence and trust, minute by minute, step by step. This is a great verse for when in doubt. When in doubt of what his will is. He literally spells it out for us in 1 Thessalonians 5:16. Always be joyful. Never stop praying. Be thankful in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you who belong to Christ Jesus. To be joyful, to pray, and to be thankful. When we do those things, it puts our mind on him. And that lets us want his will and desire his will. And it's this beautiful design that starts with knowing him and knowing his word and trusting him. Okay. I feel like I was a little bit I think I needed Heidi here. She's kind of my emotional support dog, and she's gone. But anyway, I hope that everybody has a great Sunday, Friday, Saturday, whenever you're watching this. And it's also rodeo season in Fort Worth, so that's why I have this kerchief on. This is about as rodeo as I get. I like to dress the part. I don't like to participate. So, there you go. Have a great day!